I think we got about 70% of the registered attendee, about 84 people. Okay. Okay. Do you hear me all?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Okay, dear President of Engineers at Geoscience Manitoba, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to the Professional Development Seminar on GRED, which is Africa's largest hydropower plant. Our association, Engineers Geoscience Manitoba, was established in 1920, exactly 100 years ago. As part of the centennial celebration, our association has been planning different ways to recognize and celebrate this important milestone of our profession. Today's PD seminar is part of this historic celebration of our association. Over 150 participants have been registered to attend this seminar, which makes it one of the largest online attended PD in the history of our association. As the chair of Ethio-Eritrean members chapter, I am so proud and honored. I sincerely thank the organizing committee, Ephraim Taklemariam, Dr. Desaleng, Ariam, for organizing this really unique and interesting seminar. By the end of today's seminar, I hope that each and every one of you will go with a good understanding of what you come about. Before proceeding to today's seminar, I would like to thank our sponsors. Of course, our association, Engineers Geoscience Manitoba, National Bank, Mortgage with Sunny, as well as travel agency. Now, I would like to invite Jason Mann, the president of our association, Engineers Geoscience Manitoba. Jason is a professional geologist and a president of our association. Jason is the head of the Environmental Services Department and the associate principal at KJ's group. I know, Jason, you just finished your first council meeting a few hours ago. Really, I appreciate you accept our invitation and to come and to open this interesting PD seminar. Now I will ask you just to open today's PD, please.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. As president of Engineers Geoscientists Manitoba, it's my pleasure to be here today to bring some greetings on behalf of our over 8,000 members of our engineering and geoscience community. I certainly would like to thank the Ethio-Eritrean chapter, especially GetNet, Maluye, and Association Councillor Ephraim Teklemariam for inviting me today to your webinar. When we look at all of the engineering and geoscience regulators across Canada, the chapters we have here in Manitoba, such as yours, have become a very unique identifier for our association, providing support within our community of engineers and geoscientists. As primarily a volunteer-run organization, we understand very carefully and closely how important it is to give back to the community. The prosperity of a community depends on helping each other as we move forward. And that's partially why we're here today. Despite all the challenges we face this year, it's a great year, I think, for the profession of engineering and geoscience, our professions in Manitoba. There's always interesting and challenging problems to be solved with the aim to better our societies. This is really at the heart of what we do and why we do it. So I'd like to thank all of the volunteers of the Ethio-Eritrean chapter who are devoting their time to work on helping others and strengthening our community. Our communities and our communities of practitioners. Participating in the activities of your profession, our professions, is an important way to have your voice heard and bring change. My time as president is just beginning, and it's my hope that this kind of participation in the activities and governance of the association will only continue to strengthen. So thank you for having me today to open your webinar session, and I wish all of you the best in the presentation tonight, and stay safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Before we proceed to the presentation, I would like to just mention a couple of ground rules. Please remain muted as much as you could. If you have questions, you got a couple of options. You may type your questions under the Zoom chat. What we're gonna do is we're gonna collect those questions and then we're gonna ask on your behalf. And the other option is wait until the end of the seminar, then raise your hand, of course, using the Zoom option. Then you'll be given an opportunity to speak directly to the presenter. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them under the comment section or under the chat section. Now, let me give you a brief introduction about about our presenter, Dr. Fissa Onduche. Fissa Onduche is a practicing member with our association. He obtained his PhD in civil engineering from the University of Manitoba. Dr. Onduche is the acting executive director of the hydrologic forecasting and water management in the government of Manitoba. Dr. Onduche has been with the province of Manitoba for over 11 years, and he has multiple positions during this period. With his current role as the acting executive director, Dr. Onduche oversees the day-to-day operations of the hydrologic forecasting, hydrologic operations, hydrologic standards, as well as development review branches. Dr. Onduche has over 20 years of experience in hydrologic as well as hydraulic design and analysis. He is also involved in a number of extracurricular activities and currently the chairman of Alliance for GRED in Canada. With no further ado, I guess, please welcome Dr. Onduche. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Getinat. Could you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Thank you for the nice words, and thank you, the Ethio-Eritrean chapter, for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure to come and present, and it's more pleasure when you present something like you like to do. So with that being said, I will share my slides. And if you have any questions at any time, you might wait until the end and ask, or you can actually type it on the questions, and Getinat will help me on selecting them and bring it back to me. So let me share the screen if I can now.
Sorry, Dr. Fassa, would you mind admitting some of the attendee? Sorry, just.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Just
okay.
Admit all. Admit all on top.
Admit all. Okay. Yeah, there are quite few people waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just keep an eye once in a while.
Okay. Okay, I think I admitted all now. Yeah, okay, so so do you see my screen now? I believe you
yes.
See it, right? So just give me 1 second. Okay. As Gatina said, I'll be speaking about GERD. As GERD stands for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. I try to outline my presentation in I'll first give a background of the hydroelectric potential of Ethiopia before we go into the depths of GERD. Then I'll talk about the demand of hydroelectric potential. Then come to some technical details, which some of you guys might enjoy. And as you probably know, or if you haven't heard, GERD has been on the news, on the media a lot, and mostly because of the concerns from downstream stakeholders. So I'll touch base on that as well. And finally, I'll speak about the current status of the dam, and that's when I'll finish it. Before I go to my presentation, I want to say something personal note here. As Gatina said, currently I work in government of Manitoba. I'm acting executive director of hydrologic forecasting and water management. I am also chairman of Alliance for GERD in Canada. And I do actively work in other community services, some in board members and some in not. However, this presentation and its contents are not related to any of my affiliations. As such, they only reflect my personal knowledge, experience, and literature reviews on the subject matter. And finally, I would like to acknowledge all the scholars, researchers who have spent several hours on this specific topic, who made my life easy when bringing the data. So I want to acknowledge that, and none of the maps you might be looking at are made by me, other than minor modifications so that they can fit my presentation. So if you probably do not know, so this the map you see here is the Ethiopian topography. So it ranges from minus 125 millimeter above sea level or 125 meter below sea level to 4,600 meter above sea level. So as you could see here, I'm pointing right here at the northeast point. That's where the lowest point, that's about 125 meter below sea level. So other low areas, southeast and some in the western part, goes to the highest areas around the mountains, about 4,600 meter above sea level. In between the eastern mountain and the western mountain, the eastern highlands or the western highlands, there is a rift valley which goes just right northeast direction. So that rift valley has a very low areas when it moves to the east, but there are quite few lakes because it's kind of a plateau around there. So the reason I say this, I'm going to come next. When you look at the annual precipitation variation in Ethiopia, it pretty much follows the topography. So the highland areas receive significant precipitation throughout the year, and the lowland areas receive very low precipitation. So all the maybe grayish area here receive 90 to 500 millimeter in a year. In a sense, evaporation is more than precipitation. But when you look at the high areas, like near the mountains, precipitation could go as up to 2,500 millimeter per year. So the western part, mostly around here, the western part of the country receives significant amount of precipitation. So what happens in a particular year is when these highland areas receive significant precipitation, then the lowland areas could get flooding because there's a lot of water coming from the highland areas, flood lowland areas. Or when the lowland areas, they don't get any much precipitation, they are very vulnerable for drought because we are looking at only 90 to 500 millimeter precipitation. So minor system in the climate pattern could lead to severe drought or severe flood. What you see here is the population density. Again, interestingly, the population density is concentrated on areas where there is high rainfall. So as you could see, most population density is on the eastern and western highlands, of course, on the Rift Valley as well, but majority of the density followed the precipitation pattern. That's mostly because it has to follow the cultivation, right? So the dry areas, the eastern part of the country or near northeast, the population is very less compared to the other areas. So now we come to the river basins. So Ethiopia has about 12 major river basins. So I listed all of them here. So the annual flow on the river basins varies significantly depending on where they are and depending on how much precipitation and evaporation comes there. But it goes from 0 billion meter cube to 55 billion meter cube. So when you go to, let's say, southeast near Ogaden area, as I said earlier, very low precipitation, the annual volume of flow is almost negligible, close to 0. Same is true for near Afar region, northeast. But when you come to the western part, near the Blue Nile area, is 55 billion meter cube annual flow volume. Part of the Tekeze Basin, about 8 billion, and the Baro Akobo, about 24 billion meter cube. So most of the high flows are on the western part of the country. Just to give you a perspective, the Red River, if you are in Winnipeg here, Manitoba, you know what the Red River is. So the Red River at Senegat has 5.6 billion meter cube. Or the Assiniboine River at Hedingley has 2.2 billion meter cube. So when a Red and Assiniboine joins in Winnipeg at James Avenue, it's about close to 8 billion meter cube. So that only accounts for the volume of Tekeze. So we're looking at heavy, huge flows in the western part of the country. So when you look at gross hydroelectric potential, gigawatt per year, so where's the flows there, there's a more hydroelectric potential. For most of you hydropower people here, hydroelectric potential is a function of flow and head. So Ethiopia is privileged to have heavy, mighty flows and also privileged to have mountainous areas. So water coming from those mountainous areas develops very high head with high flows. So with that, when you see some of the rivers, let's say Blue Nile has 78,000 gigawatt hour per year. It has a capacity of that much. When you look at Baro Akobo, about 13,000 Omo give about 36,000. These are significant amount of gigawatt per hour. And obviously, as you move to the east, because the terrain gets flatter and the discharge is smaller, the capacity is less. So that's why Wabishebele River is only 5,440, and Northern Awash Basin is only 4,470. So in general, the nation has about 50,000 megawatt power generation capability with 155,000 gigawatt hour per year. Very interestingly, only 4,500 megawatt is installed so far. Only 4,500 megawatt out of the 50,000 potentially available hydropower. And mainly that accounts for less than 5%. There are few projects being under construction, including the GERD. With those recently going to be finished, there is a potential of about 7,500 megawatt. So when you combine these two, it's close to 12,000 megawatt out of the 50,000 megawatt. So it's still very low. I like to bring the potential of irrigable land here for your attention, because I'm going to talk to this later. So when you see, so the areas in the circle shows the potential irrigable land in thousands of hectares. So as you could see, the Blue Nile area has about 816,000 hectare potential irrigable land. The Baro Akobo about 1,020 in thousands of hectare. And as you move to the east, again, Ogaden area, not much. But Ganale, there is so much because it gets flatter, there's heavy flow and flat area. So that's why heavy potential for irrigation is there. So the country gross area is 112 million hectare, the total geographic area. Out of that, 30 to 70 million hectare is cultivable land. So that's potentially people can cultivate for agricultural purposes. Only 15 million hectare has been cultivated so far. There is still so much potential to be cultivated. When you look at irrigation potential, it's somewhere between 3.7 to 5.3 million hectare of irrigable land in the entire nation. So basically, when you add up all these numbers, you come up somewhere around 3.7 on average million hectare of irrigable land. Interestingly, only 0.1 to 0.2% is irrigated. So less than 5%, that from out of the total abundance of irrigable land, with all that water potential, only less than 5%, actually less than 2% is irrigated, which shows significantly potential is remaining there. So when we look at the significance of the Nile Basin, because we are talking about GERD now, which is a dam which is being built on the Nile Basin, GERD is being built right around here. If you see my hand, my cursor. So I want to talk about the Nile River in total. So whatever you see on the red area is the catchment portion of the Nile River in Ethiopia. So that's the Ethiopian portion of the catchment of the Nile River. And when you look at that, basically adding the numbers I said earlier, we have 70% of total annual flow of the country comes from the Nile Basin. So the Nile Basin has about 70% of total annual flow volume. The 70% of total irrigable land of the nation is on the Nile Basin. 70% of total hydropower potential is on the Nile River Basin. You could see the importance of the Nile River Basin. Just the Blue Nile alone, I don't know if you see the color contrast here. So the blue line is around here. Just the blue line alone has 40,000 gigawatt per hour hydropower potential, or it can alone generate up to 10,000 megawatts of hydropower potential. Again, you have seen earlier the population density. 45% of the country's population is within this red area, within the Nile Basin, and 33% of total geographic area is within the Nile Basin. So interestingly, 86% of the Nile annual volume comes from this area, from Ethiopia. So when you consider about the Nile, you have to picture out that 86% of the flow on the Nile River comes from these highlands of Ethiopia around here, where Ethiopia 33% of 45% of population resides, which is about 33% of the area. So now, when you look at the bigger Nile River, so this is the catchment area of the Nile River. So it starts around Burundi here at southern end. You have Tanzania, Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Sudan, Eritrea, Egypt. These are all 11 basin countries within the Nile River. And this is the longest river in the world with 6,650 kilometers. It's the longest river in the world and it comprises 11 basin countries. And when you add up the population of all the basin countries, it comes up to, when you add up population within the Nile Basin, it comes up to 530 million people. When I say earlier, 86% of the water comes from this red area. So when you look at, even though the watershed area is huge, the 86% of the Nile flow comes from this red area, which is from the highlands of Ethiopia. Because of this, Nile River has been a center of political, economic, and cultural significance on Eastern and Northern Africa. When the British came to colonize Eastern and Northern Africa, their ultimate target focused on the Nile Basin, capturing those areas. You can see that is going back to the 18th century. As much as it's important for the political and economic integration of the area, the Nile River has been a major cause of regional instability. I will talk about that later. It has been historically a major cause of regional instability. As a matter of fact, most of the regional instabilities initiated in East Africa somehow tied up with the Nile resource. So going back to Ethiopia, with all that water availability, Ethiopia is actually the second largest hydropower potential in Africa, next to Democratic Republic of Congo. So because of that, Ethiopia actually has a nickname of the water powerhouse of Africa, because from a very small area, you could see how much flow is coming. It's being considered as the water powerhouse of Africa. But yet, 21% of the population, which is about 24 million people, are under poverty line. 56% of the population, that's 64 million, has no access to electricity. So that's about twice the population of Canada has no access to electricity, which means they don't even know what electricity means. 23% of them, which is about 26 million, has no access to clean water. And 93%, that's about 107 million, has no access to modern sanitation. To put in a perspective, I have a picture here. So this picture is taken in 2016. It's a satellite image taken by NASA during night. So when you see during nighttime, so you can see how dark Ethiopia is. What the point you see here is the capital city. So everywhere is dark, and this is a reality today, as we speak now. In contrast, you can see slightly lightened up Sudan, and you can see this is Egypt. You can see how the power is lightening up. So this shows economic instabilities, differences between the two countries, not only that between actually all the Nile Basin countries, which I will be talking later. But with all that water power, with all that hydroelectric potential, with all that irrigable land, Ethiopia remains one of the poorest countries in the world, which I will speak in later. So to make things worse, things don't stop there. To make things worse, when you look at population trend, Ethiopia is actually one of the very few countries in the world that population growth is not forecasted to peak at any time. Look at going all the way up to 2100, population continues to grow. This is a forecast done by I think United Nations. So the UN estimates by 2020, like now, it's about 115 million, which is exactly right. And the trend is population is continue to grow, and without any peak date. And Ethiopia is only one of the few countries. Not only that, so you can see that the rate of population growth about 2.6% per year. So this shows the need for significant change in infrastructure. Obviously, the policy change needs to be done here because population growth to be controlled. But we'll talk about the infrastructure because it has to be balanced. So that's why the need for mega structures.
Sorry, Dr. Fasa, would you mind checking if there are?
Yes, I have been at a meeting whenever they come.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this is the world population by 2030, just 10 years from now. In 2030, so you could see India will remain one of the most populous countries, followed by China, United States, and so on. In the next 10 years, or actually next 9 years, Ethiopia will have a population of 145 million, and 60% of that is projected to be below the age of 40. So you could see how the issue is very serious here. So with that comes scarcity in a resource, scarcity in land, scarcity in food, scarcity in water, scarcity in electricity. Electricity demand is projected to increase by 30% a year. Because people have no access to electricity, they use wood to cook, they use wood to warm up their house, which leads to deforestation, a severe deforestation, eventually going to affect all the basin countries, Nile Basin, Nile flows, if not others. Climate change induced changes are going to be there. As we all know, climate change comes with heavy intense rain, which could lead to heavy floods, or shifting in a rain pattern, which could lead to significant droughts. So for all this, Mother Nature has to be controlled. In the one way we use in engineering to control this is to build hydroelectric dams or reservoirs to store water. So you can use during drought time to store water, so you can use to mitigate flooding. A little bit emphasis here on the severe flooding here. So the map you see here is flood-prone areas in Ethiopia. So most low-lying areas, as I said earlier, are subject to flooding. So you have mountainous area here. That area gets heavy rain, and that rain comes and floods lowland area. And most of the time, it's a flash flood. And the flood comes almost on annual basis. So 1 year you could get flooding in the east, next year on the south, and next year on north. It comes everywhere because of the vulnerability, the change in the precipitation pattern. So when you don't get flood, then it comes a drought. Because as I said, lowland areas, this all pink or gray areas, they only receive 90 to 500 millimeter rain. So the moment that there is a minor shift on that in one season, because people don't store water, there is no irrigation or nothing, people rely on a rain-fed agriculture. So the moment precipitation pattern changes, then there will come a severe drought. So these areas all show the drought-prone areas. So all the green areas are low drought probability. As you move away from the mountainous areas, that shows a very high drought probability. So most areas are in high drought probability, with the exception of the western part. The drought costed significantly. It often leads to millions of people into starvation. Millions of people dead in the drought in 1980s. Millions of cattle die. People migrate. Following drought, it usually comes with so many diseases. Waterborne diseases are function of the drought. Things start to complicate. So this what you see is actual. Actually, animals died there because animals can't get water to drink. So I want to show one interesting picture here to give a perspective, because perspective matters a lot. So when you see this map in Africa, the legend here is the orange color is degree of dependence on neighboring states. When the neighboring states depend on water from the other countries. So when you see all African countries, with the exception of Ethiopia and Lesotho, are dependent on water coming from other countries. So Ethiopia has 100% of, near 97% of its water actually flows to other countries, with the exception of one, which eventually disappears on the desert. So Ethiopia doesn't get any water from other countries into Ethiopia, but Ethiopia feeds all the neighboring countries, or Sudan and or Egypt, and all the neighboring countries basically get Ethiopia water. Yet with all this water potential, Ethiopia, as I said, all those problems still remain. Mainly, Ethiopia cannot utilize its natural resource, mainly internal conflicts triggered by external sources most of the time, and direct external influence. So these are the main cause historically been. So when we look at the Nile Basin now, I want to zoom in the Nile Basin. The reason being is because I'm going to talk about GERD, the GERD Dam, right? So Ethiopia wasn't, in principle, allowed to use the Nile Basin historically, with direct or indirect pressure from other sources. When you look at the history of negotiation on the Nile Basin, because it goes through 11 countries, and 11 countries have to agree how to use the river. So there was an agreement in 1929. So this is a right after Egypt independence in 1922, when the British let Egypt independence. They actually made an agreement in 1929 so that Egypt can use 48 billion cubic meters of Nile water. Not only that, it gives Egypt should use all of the Nile water on dry season, 100% of it. And not only that, the British said Egypt will have a veto power over any upper river water management projects. So this is an agreement in 1929. And at that time, most countries are under British colony, with the exception of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a never colonized country, so technically it's indirectly saying that Ethiopia, you cannot use it. Only Egypt can use it. That's what it is. Then at that time, Sudan just became independent in 1959. And when Sudan became independent in 1959, 56, Sudan got the right for 4 billion cubic meter of water, which will come later. Through the 1929 negotiation, when that agreement was made, Ethiopia was not consulted. Ethiopia, when the signature was done, Ethiopia is no part of it, not consulted. But later on, that was used to pressure international communities from Ethiopia not building the dam. When a developing country builds a mega project, you need support of other countries because the cost is very expensive. If Ethiopia had the power back then, Ethiopia wouldn't have waited for any agreement because all agreement has to be fair. At that time, Ethiopian power is not enough to build a dam, so Ethiopia had to rely on other developed countries for financial assistance and so on. So with that, it wasn't able to maintain. So then came 1959. So 1959, there is another agreement done between Egypt and Sudan again, because Sudan became independent in 1956. This was, the 1959 was done again before Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya got independence. So it's before that. So really, it's excluding Ethiopia. So the chart you see here shows in that 1959, 66% of the water was allocated to Egypt, 22% of that was allocated to Sudan, 12% of that was allocated to evaporation, but none of it is allocated to Ethiopia. When someone considers nature, evaporation, you let some amount of storage for evaporation, but when you don't bring into the table of discussion the country that contributes 86% of the Nile basin, not sure how it made sense at the time. But the 1959 agreement allocated 55.5 billion cubic meter of water annually for Egypt, that's about 66%. Sudan allocated about 18.5 billion cubic meter of water, that's about 22%, and 12% remains for evaporation. And Ethiopia, once again, was not included on this negotiation. Actually, as a matter of fact, Ethiopia knew about it after the fact. So the 1959 agreement not only talked about the water share, but it also came with giving Egypt to construct one of the largest dams on earth. That's called the Aswan High Dam, which is completed in 1971. And it has 148 billion cubic meter storage capacity. So this 1959 agreement is basically the base of the Aswan Dam construction. Not only that, then there are many other dams followed after that. And as of few years ago, there are actually 22 major dams on the Nile River. So when you probably hear on a news or somewhere about GERD, the first thing comes to your mind is, wow, why happens this? But Ethiopia is trying to build its second dam. First dam was built a few years ago. Then there were actually about 22 dams on Nile River already developed by this time. So in 1959 to 1964, then Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie actually said this is unacceptable, and he actually made a few major decisions at the time for his credit. But he said like this in one of the development projects: the development of this resource has been our constant preoccupation, and we are today taking the first step in our program for fullest utilization of this God-given gift for the benefit of our people. So he said this when they are building the Koka Dam, which is outside the Nile tributary. And he hinted that we will continue this to work on the Nile Basin because that's where 70% of our resources. So he began with the United States Army, US Army, spent $10 million of 1959 value, $10 million to make a comprehensive study of the Nile Basin, and that's called Land and Water Resource of the Nile Basin, Ethiopia. This actually known by external forces, and immediately the external forces reacted in a way, starting war from Ogaden, Somalia, various other areas. And the Imperial eventually went to fighting. Then after the Imperial came Mengistu Mariam. Then came the 1980s and the 1980s drought. So the 1980 to 2010 is basically the transition period, but I want to mention a couple of things here. So the middle of 1980s is one of the driest period in the record of the Nile Basin. So basically there was very, very low rain compared to the normal rain pattern. That caused a series of water crises on the Nile River. On around 1984, by that time, already 1 million Ethiopians have died by starvation. 1 million Ethiopians on the Nile Basin in 1984 died. And Ethiopia actually defined by Oxford Dictionary, drought, famine means something like Ethiopia. So that's in 1984 when the developed countries actually put all that embargo in Ethiopia not to develop its water resources. Interestingly, during that, the most critical driest period of the Nile Basin, Egypt 100% averted disaster by using the high Aswan Dam. So with all that fighting in Ethiopia, with all that instabilities, nothing was done. Then we came back, a different government. In 1997 to 1999, Ethiopia initiated something called the Nile Basin Initiative. Basically, whatever system has been done is not fair, not sustainable. So there should be a sustained, all-inclusive, equal use, equal benefit use of the Nile waters. So with the aim of developing the Nile Basin water resources in a sustainable, equitable way to ensure peace for all its people. That's what the definition of 1999 Nile Basin Initiative is, ensuring cooperation and the joint action between the riparian countries while seeking win-win ways. So if I am correct, all the Nile Basin countries are part of the 1999 agreement. So this is the first time all the basin countries sit down together, say, the past is wrong, we need to get the right, this is straight. So let's come up with a basin-wide comprehensive agreement. So for 10 years, the agreement didn't move at all. In around 2000, I remember I was one of the sitting member of one of the research team. The ball is just rolling, but nothing practical is coming. So after almost 10 years, in 2010, a cooperative framework agreement is established. So the Nile Basin Initiative actually led to cooperative framework agreement. So that's the only legally binding inclusive agreement initiated by all parties, and 6 countries signed, and the other 2 countries, Egypt and Sudan, left. In 2013, Sudan came, signed. Actually, now only Egypt is not signing, but Egypt was one of the sitting members of that. So this is the only legally binding document signed by all countries, with the exception of Egypt, for equal and usage and equitable share of the Nile Basin. So this is in 2010. So in 2011, so in April 2011, then the late Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, he actually put a foundation stone, laid a foundation stone for now what we call GERD. So the Grand Renaissance Ethiopian Dam. So the GERD is set on the Blue Nile, as I probably I have shown you earlier, just 15 kilometers east of the border with Sudan. That time, the estimated cost was about $4.7 billion. And at this time, the project is fully funded by Ethiopia because Ethiopia knew that there is no way Ethiopia can build its water resources unless Ethiopia build the dam by itself. So literally speaking, almost every Ethiopian who makes money has contributed to this. I'm one of them. I bought bonds, I contributed to this, and I personally don't know a person sitting in Ethiopia making money but doesn't contribute to this because people want to get out of poverty. So the GERD brings hope, optimism for millions of Ethiopians. So it's not just a development project. It's not like country X is building project Y. It's a question of survival for the nation. It's a matter of existence. Not only that, it's a symbol of national unity. People from east to west, north to south, everybody is coming together to build this dam. That's why they call the dam a Renaissance dam, which means it's a rebirth, a certificate out of poverty. So why is that beneficial? Is that really that matters? The energy generating capacity of the GERD is 15,760 gigawatt per hour. Just to give you perspective, that is equivalent to illuminating 71 million households. If you recall one of first slides, 66% million people in Ethiopia have not seen electricity in their life. So just GERD alone is enough to illuminate all of them and actually can produce more for industrial purpose. So whatever extra power sold to neighboring countries could bring up to $700 million annual revenue. For a developing country like Ethiopia, $750 million is significant. The reservoir creates a huge area. I will talk later about the reservoir size. And studies done by independent consultants concluded about 7,000 tons of fish production can be done annually. The reservoir can create resort and recreation facilities. As we speak today, since the construction started, over 200,000 people visited the dam site. That comes with millions of dollars income. Just the construction of the dam creates 200,000 tourists. Imagine the existence of the dam, how much it could bring. The power trade agreement is going to be done, which brings regional integration between Kenya, Djibouti, Sudan, Somalia. It could go all the way up to South Africa, and to the north, it could go all the way up to Egypt. If there's a cooperation, the power comes from GERD, could go to all the neighboring countries. So the satellite image you saw billion can actually be changed by JERD because 71 million household is significant. It's not usually told, but the benefit of the dam for Sudan and Egypt is also enormous. Because of the dam, Sudan actually, both Sudan and Egypt have less flood risk. If you had followed the news a few months ago, Sudan got one of the largest floods in history, including the capital flood. So if there was JERD at that time, that would have been eliminated or reduced. Not only that, the water coming from JERD is now a regulated flow for hydropower generation. So that regulated flow creates significant advantage for increased irrigation, increased control of the dams downstream. It reduces flood risk. It actually reduces sediment load because the Nile comes with significant sediment. So the presence of JERD reduces sediment load. And actually it saves water in a sense when you store water on less evaporation area and release when it's needed, you actually save a lot of water. Studies estimate about 10 billion annual billion cubic meters can be saved, which can be used by Hayas-1 dam. So there is significant benefit. So the mother you see here, at this age, she's carrying wood because she has to cook for her children tonight. So this comes with too much stress, deforestation, so many consequences. We are living this in 21st century. We're not talking about 100 years ago or 200 years ago. This is happening today, now as we speak. People are carrying wood. And we are not talking one or two people. We are talking millions of people. So what is JERD? The layout is this. I'm just going to go through it quickly. So the dam has two components. There is a roller concrete compacted dam, which has about 170 meter height around the spillway here, two power houses on both sides of the spillway. It has a capacity to generate up to 5,150 megawatt. The reservoir has about 246 kilometer length. You can picture how long that is, 246 kilometer. And it can actually generate, as I said, electricity up to 15,700 or 600, close to 15,700. So the dam, the main dam is located here, but there is a saddle dam here, which is about 5,200 meters, about 5 kilometers. So the saddle dam is a concrete-faced rockfill dam, which has about a height of 50 meters and a volume of up to 14 million meter cube. So there are multiple spillways. So there is one spillway around here at the center. There is emergency spillway here, and the saddle dam is actually designed in a way to pass emergency flood in probable flood time. So there is about 13 turbines, so 11 of 400 megawatts and 2 of 375 megawatts. So this is where the dam design is. So the current status of the project as of October, late October, so this is as of late October 2020, the overall civil work is 89% completed. So you could see that picture here. So the civil works is basically, the remaining part is to fill this. So as you could see here, so this open area, so that's where to fill it. So this part was filled last summer. So the main concrete, the main dam is about 80% completed. The powerhouse about 78%. The saddle dam is 100%. The gated spillway about 97%. So when you combine all that, all the civil work is about 89% completed. The hydromechanical work is about 46.5% completed. And the steel structure work is about 33%. So there is some lag on the steel structure and the hydromechanical work. So when you see overall, the project is completed about 75%. So this is the project as the dam, as you could see the picture of the dam and the design as of end of October. So it's 75% completed. So what's remaining is to install the turbines, more turbines, bring the civil work up to here, and basically fill the dam. So that's what it is. So what's the milestones remaining? So the first filling of the dam was done. That's about 4.9 billion meter cube. It was completed in July 2020. So that's almost after 10 years. So its commence. Early generation is expected to occur on mid-2021. Second impoundment is going to happen on July 2021. And the last unit completion is August 2023. So by August 2023, is forecasted with, unless spending a major natural COVID or things like that, the prediction is by August 2023, GERD will be 100% complete. So I just put this on stage now. So this year, this 565 is where it is, or 4.9 billion meter cube. So it's going to be filled on stage. So by the time it reaches about 640, which is around here at the spillway crest level, so the full supply level, the dam will have 74 billion cubic meter per second. So this makes the dam the largest hydropower generation plant in Africa. The design, the megawatt was changed slightly recently to increase efficiency. Otherwise, it would have been, as per the original design, would have been the 6th largest or the 7th largest hydropower plant in the world. But with the current design, it is 15th largest, but the largest in Africa. So what are the downstream concerns? So there is so much being said on the news or everywhere. What are the downstream concerns? Sudan is concerned about dam safety. Basically, what if the dam fails? And that concern can be legitimate and cannot be legitimate, because when you build a dam, you could always say, what if it happens this? Right? What if it doesn't happen? So Ethiopia, I don't want to go to the details, but took external study with Egypt and Sudan. Part of it, they come up with a conclusion. So the dam design actually modified to meet all the requirements of the dam concern. The other concern is the filling and operation of the dam. Whether they get enough water when the dam is filling, and how do you release? Those are the concern Sudan has. The other concern Sudan has is agriculture reduction. When you control the dam, what type of agriculture reduce? This is very interesting. Egypt is concerned what if agriculture increases, and Sudan is concerned what if agriculture reduces. So by itself, either or is the reality, right? So in theory, the expectation is it balances. It doesn't increase or reduce, balance. The only thing you control it. That's the way I understood. But Sudan says, what if agriculture reduce? And Egypt says, okay, what if now, because the water regulated, then Sudan gets more area to farm. What if Sudan start to farm and they use more water? The other concern Sudan has the impact on brick industry, because the dam is going, the Blue Nile brings huge sediment to Sudan, and they use that sediment for a brick industry, making brick. So the question is, what if the dam controls all the sediment in our brick industry? So those are the concerns by Sudan. So the concerns by Egypt is, what if GERD will decrease the current water use of Egypt and its water allocation as per the 1959 agreement. So if you recall, the 1959 agreement says Egypt has to use 55.5 billion meter cube per second all the time. On dry condition, of course, so there is no way Mother Nature can guarantee a country can use this or that. So all the countries, European countries, with the exception of Egypt and Sudan, say that they weren't part of the 1959 agreement, so they don't consider that as a binding agreement. So Egypt also said GERD will create precedents for other Nile Basin countries to build more dams. So because Ethiopia build now, okay, tomorrow another country will come and build. So that's their concern. Also, Egypt says GERD may be operated in a way to control flows into High Aswan Dam. And Egypt says GERD is a regulated flow may provide opportunity to develop additional irrigation projects for Sudan, which I said earlier. And Egypt says GERD will change the current hegemonic status of Egypt, basically controlling the entire. So I'm going to go quickly through what happened since the dam is built. So actually Ethiopia, with the Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, back then in May 2011, actually initiated international panel of experts to examine the impact of GERD. So Ethiopia said, okay, let's bring all the international panel of experts and see if all the impact, what you are saying is legitimate. So the international panel of experts established in May 2012 submitted a report in May 2013. So the report adopted, and it says, the report appreciated the regional benefit of the dam. So this is a report done by Ethiopia, Egypt, Sudan, and an independent four internationally acknowledged researchers. They said appreciated the regional benefit of the dam, concluded that the dam design and the construction of the dam is up to international standards, and they actually recommended additional 2 studies. They said even there are more studies can be done because cooperation can actually bring more projects. So I'm going a little bit faster here. So that agreement was actually the IPO, even though the report is published, didn't go any further. Then in 2015, there was a declaration of principle signed by Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. So for the first time now, the 3 countries signed. This is what that day, the signature day. That's what the picture you see. So in March 2015, they called the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization and causing no significant harm. So the 3 countries approved the construction of GERD, and they also said the all operation of GERD and others should be on a principle of equitable and reasonable utilization and causing no significant harm. So all the development on Nile should be actually based on equitable utilization of resources. So the 3 countries agreed on that. So there were many discussions. There are negotiations still going on. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go to the detail, but I want to say something just to show the perspective, because in international negotiations, there should always be a perspective. So the negotiations are always around technical details and legal perspective. So the technical details talk about first filling of the dam. What if this happens or that happens when the dam first fills? What if data exchange? Basically, one country want to control the data of another country, which, let's share data, basically. If you give this data, I will give those data. Those data exchanges. The dam safety, as I said, annual operation, how the dam is going to be annually operated, drought management during filling and operational and during operation, and refilling. So the 2015 declaration actually agreed with the first feeling, but that again surfaced. So the legal parts are like dispute resolution, adjustments, and upstream developments, all those legal parts. So the picture you see here is a very interesting picture. I put it for perspective. So the first line you see is Egypt demand the filling to be done in 12 years, or at least sometimes up to 17 years. So the rationale that came up here is the dam should be considering maintaining a very high level on Aswan Dam during a dry period. So the two are very unlikely conditions. So with all very unlikely condition, so that's 12 years. So Ethiopia is saying with a normal condition or even dry condition, moderate dry, upper end of filling scenarios could take about 7 years. On lower end, when we get a near average to slightly wet, it could take 5 years. So we already feel the first year. So we anticipate actually the filling will be finished in the next 4 years with a normal condition. Independent researchers said it could go up to 7.2 years, which is still an agreement with in Ethiopia. Academic experts, other academic experts say, with the worst, if you take the worst possible scenario, about 20% dry. If you give 20% probability for dry, the rest 80%, you could still go up to 8.2 years. And if the others, like the extreme condition is, if you go like, if you go 90%, so if you guarantee 90% what Egypt needs, so the dam will be filled on 10 years. So what Egypt is requesting is totally unrealistic. So these are one of the examples, a number of unrealistic questions throughout the history are bringing issues like, in theory, collaboration would have been the only way to succeed for regional integration. But unrealistic expectation will end up in this way. So I want to say, I'm on my last slide, I want to say a couple of things here. The negotiations not always are friendly, not always, sometimes hostile. Egyptian TV actually aired live discussion, the parliament discussing live TV, saying we can communicate with the rebels in Ethiopia and use them as a bargaining chip against the Ethiopian government. This has been for history since 1929. The Egyptians or the Westerns, or somehow they use external or internal forces to push against the development in Ethiopia. It became very worse after 1959 agreement. But that's openly live. You can go to YouTube and you can find it. They said if all this fails, then there is no choice left for Egypt but to play the final card, which is using the intelligence service to destroy the dam. So this is on a meeting chaired by then Egyptian Prime Minister Mohamed Morsi in June 2013. Just recently, in October 2020, Donald Trump, again, he released the video live, I believe. He said they, referring to Egypt, will end up blowing up the dam. And I said it, and I say it loud and clear. They will blow up that dam, and they have to do something. This is a sitting president of the world powerful country saying another country invade another country. So this is what Donald Trump said. And in response for all the above harsh realities, the Ethiopian Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed said it should be underlined that no force could stop Ethiopia from building a dam. The truth is there is no country in the world fought a war to stop the upstream country from building a dam by using force. It's impossible, never done before, and not a solution. Solution is to come into the table to make a win-win equitable use of Nile water basin. So in summary, GERD is a project will contribute to the Ethiopian economy. It will grow the economy. Just GERD alone will add 1.6% of annual growth in economy once it's completed. It's an icon for Ethiopian. It's a license certificate out of poverty, and GERD project is a win-win development project, which is considered a win-win development project, which overcomes centuries of mistrust among Nile Basin countries. As things develop to be scarce, as population growth continues, either both in Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, and other countries, as climate change continues, the only alternative or way forward is to come up with a comprehensive package of using resource. GERD will pioneer a new era of cooperative regional development and improve water management at its hoped. That's what I want to say. Thank you for your time.